All right, good evening. Back in the saddle for a couple days only. Going to New York on Wednesday morning for 2 days. I hope, Amir Hashem, what's my plan on Michael, man? You're taking it rough. Taking it rough. I don't even know what my schedule is. I'll keep you posted.
I will be here Monday or Tuesday.
All right. So here's the deal.
Thank you.
We're not starting from here, but halfway down on Yud Gimel Amud Beis, we asked the following shaila: how do we know that death properly severs a bond between a husband and a wife? That when a husband dies, how do we know that she is then again allowed to marry? We went through 3 answers and we didn't like any of them. And we got to this fourth answer. And the fourth answer was, and this one can be found about 8 lines from the bottom of Yud Gimel Amud Beis, and this is where we're starting. The Gemara had said that the reason that we know that if a man dies, that a woman can remarry, is based on the pasuk of Pen Yamos b'milchama v'ish acher yikachena. That sounds very clear. What we're concerned about with a young husband going to war is that he may die, and what might happen? Another man may marry her. Haraya, the Torah clearly implies, doesn't state it, but it implies that when a woman's husband dies, she can be taken by another man, which means she can remarry. On this, the Gemara says, Maski flor of Shisha bereder of Idi, Ema man acher yavam. Perhaps we could argue that when we say in the pasuk, ish acher yikachena, that it's only talking about Yibum. Reuven's married to Rachel. Reuven dies; they have no kids. Shimon's alive, so perhaps the pasuk is speaking about a yavam and not a regular wife. Chiddush. And if this were to be true, if the question were to stand, when a woman's husband dies, in general, she's not allowed to remarry. Only if the Yibum doesn't work out, then she's allowed to remarry. Amar Ravashi, Beis Chuvos Badavar. I have 2 reasons to tell you why your question is incorrect. Chada, the Yavam lo ikri acher. We have no precedent for that in halacha. We do not see anywhere that a Yavam is called acher. The Ode, Ksiv, the pasuk says, "V'sna'aha isha acharon v'chasav la sefer krisus ochiyamusa isha acharon v'iskash misa l'gerushin." In this pasuk, we see a comparison between death and divorce. Ma gerushin sharia v'gomeres, just like a gerushin, a proper get, permits her and completes their marriage, it's now over. Af misa sharia v'gomeres. For however you want to approach this last pasuk, this is the reason that we know that marriage is ended with death. What's the havamina? Why do we need a pasuk at all? Why are you asking? He's not alive anymore. What restrictions could you possibly have? What?
Cub fans.
That's probably true. There are probably some Cub fans in the world. I'm probably one of them. So this is an odd Gemara to start with. Why would we have ever thought that death wouldn't sever a bond? Mm-hmm. And the Gemara went through 4 answers.
Well, that might be the answer.
What?
It's not so simple.
I know it's not. Obviously.
I don't know if the Gemara, we all know that a woman can remarry after death, after the death of her husband. But from where do we know that? That's what the Gemara is asking. We all know because we see it.
We know the sun rises, saying there's a lot of things that we know that are quoted. Stop it with your Tanakh knowledge. Nobody wants to hear from you. Stop it. It's okay, fine. You learned Tanakh. Congratulations. Okay, good job. There's a lot of things that we know that aren't quoted in Psukim. So, like, why over here did we have? Why? I'm asking Balabatish. I'm sure I'm wrong. I know I'm wrong. I can look at the Gemara and tell you I'm wrong. Pashat, the marriage is over. She couldn't marry somebody else. That was the Gemara's havamina. The Gemara wants to say that we need a minalan. Okay, I'm wrong. Let's move on. The Gemara says at the bottom of Yud Gimel Amud Beis, "V'hayavama niknes b'bia." We know that a yavama is not niknes in regular ways. Rachel is married to Reuven. Reuven dies. Rachel then falls to Shimon b'yibum. So how do they get married? There's no harat mekudeshes limi d'oraisa. The only way that it happens is by cohabitation. They have tashma shamita b'bia minalan. How do we know that tashma shamita between a yavam and a yavama is what consecrates their marriage? Amar Kra yavama yavo alav ulakachalo liisha. That's doesn't get more clear than that. Yavama is intimate with her and takes her to be a wife. Very clear. Perhaps lakula milsa ki isha. Perhaps we should say that the Yavama is really like any other woman, and therefore Kasef and Shtar would work just like Bia would work. Lo sal kadaitach. You cannot assume that a Yavama and a regular woman are the same. Why not? Top of Yadal Amud Aleph. Because the Gemara says the Tanya, Yachal Yehu Kesef Ushtar Gomrim Ba Kederach Shehabia Gomeras Ba. Perhaps we could have said that Kesef and Shtar, that the regular forms of marriage that apply by a regular woman are also going to complete a marriage for a Yavama, like Bia does. Talmud Lomar, no, that can't be right, because the pasuk says V'yibma. Bia gomeresba ve'in kesef u'shtar gomrimba. We have a drasha, and the drasha is the reason why the kesef and the shtar don't work. There's plenty of svaras to assume why it could work, should work, maybe. The Maisa, the Gemara rejects it outright with a drasha. Perhaps we should say that the word v'yibma is not to teach me that bia works and nothing else works, but perhaps the word v'yibma is to teach me that she can be forced to get married to the yavam. A little bit of an odd mechanics. Mechanics are strange, because he can force her to be intimate. We have languages for that nowadays. So again, what does it mean? Halacha l'maisa, how does it transact? It's a good question. I don't know. But maybe that's what the pasuk v'yibma means, that he can marry her bal korcha. Says the Gemara, no. Im kain le'makra v'yabeim. My v'yibma shamas minotarte. Because there are extra letters, we could have had a more concise phraseology of v'yabeim, and now we have v'yibma, extra letters, shamas minotarte. We learn two things from the word v'yibma. The first thing we learn is that kesef and shtar don't work by a yavama, only bia works. And the second thing we learn is that they can even get married bal korcha, even against her will. And of course, we know b'chalitza. How do we know that chalitza severs the bond between a yavama and a yavam? It says the Gemara, "Minolan dichsi v'nikra shemo b'Yisrael beis chalutza na'al kevan shechol atzba na'al." Once the shoe has been removed, hutra l'chol Yisrael. That's how we know that chalitza ends the zika. The zika is our famed word from Maseches. Yavamos that taught us that there was a natural, automatic bond upon the death of Rachel's husband to Shimon, right? When Rachel's married to Shimon, Rachel's married to Reuven, and Reuven dies, instant bond to Shimon. How do you sever that? That's done with chalitza. So it says the Gemara, that's not so simple. Ha Yisrael, the word Yisrael, hachi huda asa. That can't be what Pshat in the pasuk is, because that word Yisrael was used for something else. 10, 12 lines down. Yud Daled Amud Aleph. Haimi boile lichidetani Reb Shmuel Bar Yehuda. There was a drasha in a brisa that Reb Shmuel Bar Yehuda quoted. The pasuk is Bi Yisrael. That's our word, and the pasuk that we just had, V'nikra Shemo Bi Yisrael, Bebezdin Shel Yisrael V'lo Bebezdin Shel Ovdei Kochavim. When one does chalitza, they have to do chalitza only in a bezdin shel Yisrael, and not in a bezdin shel Ovdei Kochavim. Could you imagine such a divorce ceremony before the local magistrate, a non-Jewish court, and you walk in with this funky shoe and you're spitting on the ground, this whole odd center, they'd put you in the loony bin in about 3 seconds without having known chumash, But Lemaisa, what the halachic piece is over here is that chalitza doesn't work. The mechanics don't work in front of a secular court. It has to be done in front of a rabbinical court that is appropriate, and therefore that bezdin has to be a proper bezdin. It can't be a sham bezdin. It has to be the real deal.
A great note here from the Rit.
No, yeah.
It says that can't be talking about a secular court, that for chalitza specifically, both parents need to be Jewish. That if it's just the mom, both parents of the judge need to be Jewish. And that if it's just the mom, if just the mom is Jewish, it's a full Jew, but that person can't sit on the court of chalitza. And that's what this means.
Super interesting, huh?
I had to tell you, it's fascinating.
That's amazing. Because obviously, that's amazing.
There's a psul for, they're not dayanim. The psul is that they're not.
Just for chalitza.
Shmo Yisrael, I guess, comes.
Unbelievable.
Pretty wild.
That's unreal.
No. The Nikra Shmo B'Yisrael is an identifier of the Yavam.
But among Yisrael, I don't know.
That's not what the pasuk means. That's not what the pasuk means.
Yisrael, no, we're darshaning the word Yisrael.
Darshaning the word Yisrael.
Yisrael means both. It's fascinating.
No, there's too many other.
Lo bevezdin shel ovdei kochavim.
Yeah, that's what Garen, correct.
Yitzah shel gerim. Yeah, but this is not a ger. That's a yid. If the mother's, that's not gerim. The mother's a yid.
Right, I don't know, you said the
Ritva. The side quotes the Rashba, who seems to say the gerim line. That's what I have in the Hagos Vitzion. Straight up gerim.
Either way.
Wow.
It's amazing.
I think more interesting is I've heard on the side was that if you're a year, I don't think you're allowed to be the treasurer or the president of a shul. there's something about the most, and the most you have.
I wish there were other psulim to be on a board. Yeah.
But I never forgot. Like what's driving, but there was something about three quarters. Something that
Torah is used by women in certain leadership.
But it was in a month, I don't know.
They're cloaking.
I used to work in the synagogue services department. I never heard this. It's maybe I was untrained.
Anyway,
Maybe I should clip this out of the recording.
Maybe.
Maybe. Anyways, the Gemara says, wait 1 second. You can't tell me that we know that chalitza works from this pasuk because the word Bi Yisrael was already used to teach me that we need a bezdin shal Yisrael and not a bezdin shal ovdei kochavim or shal gerim or shal whatever, like to Ari's point. So it says the Gemara, don't worry. It says Trey Bi Yisrael ksivi. It says the word Bi Yisrael a second time in another pasuk. Shalom Yisrael. We can learn everything out that we need to with the bezdin has to be shal Yisrael, and that we know that chalitza works. We have another use of the pasuk. Maybe that second Yisrael is really not available. Amar Rabbi Yehuda Pamachas Hainu Yoshvin Lifnei Rabbi Tarfon Uvasi Yavam Alachlotz. They were sitting in front of the bezdin of Rabbi Tarfon. Yavama shows up to do chalitza. Amar Lanu. Anu kolchem ve'amru chalutz anal chalutz anal. Call out this guy that he's a chalutz anal. So says the Gemara. It's a little bit of an odd presentation because we don't see the word Bi Yisrael over here, but the Gemara is asking about the word Bi Yisrael. Says the Gemara, don't worry. Hahu, when Rabbi Tarfon told everyone to say chalutz anal, hahu mi v'nikra shemo, not nafka. That's when you should say call his name. And if you look at the whole pasuk, the pasuk says v'nikra shemo Bi Yisrael beis chalutz anal. So it's coming from the word v'nikra shemo that they have to say that, not from the word Bi Yisrael. Okay, so everything all works out. Kaftor beferach. And then we said of a misas hayavam that Yavama gets her life back. Minalan. How do we know that this is true? Kal v'chomer. I just to tell you as we prepare for this piece of Gemara. Kal v'chomers seem like simple things, but they're not. And there are a lot of subtleties in kal v'chomers that when you look at them, you're like, what is the kal and what is the chomer? And why would I say it this way? I could have said it the other way. So kal v'chomers are notoriously difficult. We think they're easy, but they're not. The way we use them socially, it's pretty easy. These are not normal. And they're very hard to understand. And each one requires the right patience and time to understand them. We're going to come across a couple tonight that are just not so simple. But let's see what our kal v'chomer is. How do we know that the misa of the yavam frees up the yavam? Minalan, just about a little bit more than a third of the way down at the 2 dots there. Kal v'chomer uma eshes ish shehi bechenek misas habal mati rasa. An eshes ish, if she were to have done something wrong, punishment would be chenek. Yet her husband matirs up that isra, meaning if she does so after he dies, it's different. Yavama shehi belab lo kol shekain. Wouldn't it be the case that Yavama that's only a lab, a lower level of isra? Shouldn't that all the more so be a matir? I hear it, but ma'yin shmit eitzel har Sinai. What is that? Why would we equate the consequence with the what?
It's very.
Yeah.
Not the etzem davar.
Not the etzem davar.
She did. She had.
If a woman is fully married and cheats, so then there's chenek. And had it been that she did the cheating after her husband died, there would not have been chenek. Then a yavama,
No cheating.
right? Correct. Her husband's death removes that capacity of the isser. Here too, yavama shehi belab lo kol shekain. All the more so that if her husband dies, all the more so when her husband dies, she will not have even the lab. And the Gemara therefore says that death therefore frees a yavama from her husband. Says the Gemara, not necessarily, because mala eshes isha kain yotza beget. There's something mechudash, something unique about an isha, about a regular woman, not a yavama, which is that she gets a get. Tomar bezusha any yotza beget. However, when it comes to a yavama, there is no get by a yavama. There's only 2 ways that a yavama is nikneses atzma. It's a chalitza, yibum, death, whatever, one of the options, but it's not a get. Says the Gemara, don't worry. Hanami yotza bechalitza. She has her own form of divorce. Her own form of divorce is chalitza. Says the Gemara, well, hold on 1 second. Mala eshes ish, shekain osra matira. However, when it comes to eshes ish, the one who is osir her is matir here. The one who is osir her is matir her, which is her husband. But that's not true by a yavam, because who was the one who caused the yibum? Her husband. When Ruvain died, he caused the yibum. So when Shimon died, Shimon didn't cause the Isser, so Shimon can't cause the Matir. The Gemara says that's not correct. Amar Avashi, Hanami Osra Matira. It's not true. Shimon, the Yavam, is also a Begeder Osra Matira. The one who caused the Isser is the one who causes the leniency, because Yavam Osra, Yavam Sharila. Because what would have happened if the Yavam wasn't there? She would have been free. So therefore, it's really not the fact that Ruvain was there that she became tethered to Shimon. It's because Shimon was there, and therefore, Osra Matira, all fine and good. Then the Gemara turns the tables a little bit and says, wait 1 second. Maybe we should say that a regular woman should be able to do chalitza instead of a get. I'm not talking about a yavama, a regular woman in the community. Maybe she should be able to do chalitza to get out of her marriage. And mikal v'chomer. What would the kal v'chomer be to show us that a regular woman could bring about a divorce, I should say, through chalitza? Uma yavama she'ena yotze beged yotze bechalitza. Just like a yavama who does not have a get, but she does have chalitza. Zu sheyotze beged eno din sheyotze bechalitza. Again, why would we say these two things are tethered to one another? But the Gemara, again, it's a havamina. We know it's not the case, right? No one has ever gotten divorced in our community with chalitza instead of a get when they're a regular woman. It says the Gemara, that says no, you can't compare the two worlds, because Sefer Krisus, that's what the pasuk says. We just read it this week. Sefer Korsa vein davar achar Korsa. No, by a regular married woman, the only thing that brings her freedom is divorce and death, and this is divorce, so you can't compare. Okay, says the Gemara, v'tehei yavama yotzeis beget mikal v'chomer. 2/3 of the way down. Maybe we should say that a yavama can cross back to being a regular one when it comes to divorce, and we can write her a regular star. Harei mutaris l'chol adam. Remember, we learned big machlokas. Can it be a yad, whatever? All the discussions we had many blot ago. Lamaisa, maybe we should say that a yavama can be yotzei beget. And what would the kal v'chomer be? Uma eshes ish shein yotze bechalitza yotze beget. A married woman who's not allowed to do chalitza, she is divorced with a get. Zu, this woman sheyotze bechalitza, who does in fact have chalitza as her way of getting out of marriage. Eino din sheyotze beget. That's the havamina. Says the Gemara. No, amar kacha. The kacha ikuva. We have the word kacha in the pasuk. The pasuk is speaking about Yavama, and it says, "V'amra kacha ye'aseh isha asher lo yivne es beis achiv." That's what the pasuk is. The word kacha, by definition, says v'kacha ikuva. This only applies over here. Namely, chalitza is a limited din. Chalitza can't be used in other places. It can only be used over here. The only way a Yavama can ever get out of her zika bond to Shimon is through death and or through chalitza v'zehu. No crossing of paths. Chalitza is its own track. Says the Gemara, lo darshi kal v'chomer. You're saying that the language of kacha, which is a language of ikuva, when we said the word kacha, what we were saying is that this applies only over here. Well, there are other times in Shas, says the Gemara, as we'll see in a moment. We have other times in Shas where we have language of ikuva, language of limitation, and we still see that a kal v'chomer is employed. So you're saying over here the reason the kal v'chomer doesn't work is because we have ikuva language. I'll show you an example where that's not true, says the Gemara. Yom Kippur, which is 30 days from now approximately. Goral, we discuss our discussion of Goral, the two animals, and the language over there is v'chuka. The chuka means, and this is the chok, this is the law over here. That's an ikuva language. And over there, let's see what happened. V'tanya v'asau chatas, that it says v'asau chatas, that the animal is made into a chatas. And the Gemara picks up on this. The Brisa asks, Hagoral ose chatas. Unlike normal cases where a Kohen determines which animal is going to be a chatas and which one is not, here it's the goral, it's the lottery that is done that determines which animal is a chatas. Vein hashem, and the identification of the animal done by the Kohen is not what makes this animal a chatas, because that's not normally how it works. Let's say I'm bringing two birds. If I'm bringing two birds, and it's arbitrary. The Kohen says this one's a chatas, and he does the chatas, whatever, this one's an olam. So the Kohen gets to be the machriya, not by the goral. Okay. Says the Gemara, Sheyachol b'halodin, who I might have thought about the following, kal v'chomer. What?
You say
Yeah. That's the drasha. Baso chatas. What does the pasuk mean? A gorel osachatas ve'in Hashem osachatas. That what makes this animal by the gorel, like the gorel, the one Azazel, the one Hashem, what makes one of them a chatas is the gorel. But it's not the shame that it's a chatas. Ve'in Hashem osachatas. The Kohen cannot be the one that determines which animal this is, that it's a chatas. Sheyachol v'alo dinu. I might have had a kal v'chomer. Uma b'makom shelo kidesh hagoral kidesh Hashem. In a place where there is no goral, let's say regular 2 birds are brought, not the case of Yom Kippur, there the Kohen can be Mekadesh al Pi Hashem. He can say this one's a chatas. So I might have thought with a kal v'chomer, makom shekidesh hagoral eino din sheikadesh Hashem. If you're able to be Mekadesh based on a goral, so all the more so the Kohen should have latitude. It says Gemara, Talmud, chatas, a goral osechatas, ve'in Hashem osechatas. All right, let's just pause here for a moment. That's what's happening out there in the world on Yom Kippur, is that when we have our 2 animals, by Yom Kippur, by the goral, chad la'Hashem and chad la'Azazel, we're not allowed to determine, the Kohen's not allowed to determine which of the 2 is going to be the chatas. It's only done al pi goral. In general, we do allow and only allow that the Kohen can determine. If a woman brings 2 animals, whatever the case may be, 2 birds, the Kohen chooses which one. Doesn't apply by goral. Okay, says the Gemara, the taima d'me'ate kra. The only reason why by the goral the Kohen can't be the one to say which one is a chatas is because of the pasuk. Because the pasuk says v'asau chatas. It's written in a weird way. Halav hachi darshinan kal v'chomer. But without that, we would have in fact had this kal v'chomer, the one that we just rejected. We would have had it, but we couldn't have it. However, afal gav d'chsiv be chuka. Even though it's true that we have a limiting word, the word of v'chuka over here, which is le'ikuva. So what the Gemara shows over here is that if by Yom Kippur we have a language of ve'ikuva, and we still could have, in theory, had a kal v'chomer, the kal v'chomer wouldn't have been ruined by the language that was le'ikuva. It was ruined for another reason. It was ruined because of aso chatas, because the language is written funky in the pasuk. So if it's true over there, why can't it be true over here? Why are you saying that kacha is the destruction of our kal v'chomer? That's not correct. Kacha should not work. Kacha should not stop our kal v'chomer, because we see that chukah doesn't stop the kal v'chomer by Yom Kippur. So this is a strong question, and therefore the Gemara now presents another possible answer to our question. Remember, our question was maybe a yavama should be yotze with a get. So the Gemara says, Amar Kra la v'lo leyavama. No, the pasuk says la. That's our pasuk that we just had this week in the parsha. V'chasav la sefer krisos, and because it says v'chasav la, that is a drasha la v'lo liyavama. Ve'ema la lishma. Maybe we should say that law isn't about whether or not a yavama is included or excluded from divorce, from a get. Perhaps we should say that law is to teach us that it has to be written lishma. So to that, the Gemara says, no, trei la ksivi. It says the word law more than once in these psukim, in this parsha of divorce. And therefore we learn 2 things. Yes, we learned that it has to be written lishma, but we also learned that it's la v'lo liyavama. Says the Gemara, ve'akati miboy lechad la lishma, ve'idach la v'lo la ulechaverta. Well, no, there are only 2 laws, but we have 3 things we need to learn from them. And the 2 that we've already learned, one is la needs to be lishma, and the other is la, that it has to be written for her and not for her and her friend. So then where do we have room to then learn the din that we're talking about to exclude a yavama? So therefore, the Gemara says, you're 100% right. Let's move on to answer number 3. And again, our question is, how do we know that a yavama can't use a get? Hello, Amarkra, na'al. Na'al in midi achrina lo. We're learning not from the world of regular marriage, but we have exclusionary language in regards to a yavama. What does that mean? The language of na'al. The parsha by the yavama speaks about a na'al. The na'al is the only method of leaving that marriage. Midi achrina lo, last of the short lines. You're saying that the word na'al teaches me that she only has one avenue to exit the marriage. We already needed the word na'al. Na'alo, ainli ela na'alo. Na'al shel kol adam minale. The word na'alo is already being used for something else to teach me that I don't need to use the husband's shoe. I can use anybody's shoe, any shoe. It says the Gemara, na'al. Na'al riba. It comes to teach us this inclusive language that it doesn't have to be the shoe of this particular husband. In fact, that's what we do. We don't use the husband's shoe. We use this, you've seen it with the 3 straps at the top. You can Google it. If it says, if that's correct, then why do we have the extra vav? Na'alo hara'uilo. It has to be a shoe that's actually fitting for the person. What does it mean that the shoe has to be fitting for the person when the chalitza is done? Prat legadol she'ein yachol lahalech bo. I can't wear a size 4 shoes if I'm a size 9. That doesn't work. Prat lekatan she'ein chofes rov raglo. Even if you have a katan shoe, it doesn't cover most of his foot. And prat, turning to the top of daf, which is a type of shoe that really doesn't have a heel. It's like an open back shoe. Fine. You might have thought that we weren't able to learn multiple things from the word nal, but it says hanal, the extra hey, teaches us a number of things. It teaches us that there's a single track path of divorce for a yavama, which is chalitza. And it also teaches us this extra din that we have to make sure the shoe fits. And that is the end of this particular case. All right, very good. We learned a lot today. We're just halfway done. If we actually review all the cases we learned, there's a lot of like very, very practical mechanics of getting divorced, how to know that death works. I mean, like very important sugyas. How to know that chalitza, let's say in Lamaisa, this can happen. A husband thinks he knows what he's talking about, the yavam, he writes a get to the yavama. And she goes to get married and somebody else, and they have babies. Mamzerim. So these Gemaras are very, very clarifying for us that there is one track to divorce when you are a Yavama, and that is Chalitza, and you're done.
For her, I mean, while she's at Yavama, it's not going to give them that's only allowed, but she sleep with somebody else. But if the children are still on there.
I don't know the answer to that question. I might have spoken out of turn in regards to the status of the kids. Yeah, I doubt it. If she has just the Zika bond, what?
Yeah, like that's also what we say.
That she'd be a Yavama or she wouldn't be? I mean, that the kids would be Mamzerim in such a case? In the Yavam, in the Yavama state.
She's an Ish.
She's not an Ishasish. She has a Zika. But an Arusa also. No, but an Arusa also.
No, I'm saying these which I hear, the Yotza, how does she go out? That's the law with Chalitza with Mrs. Laval, right? But that didn't happen. I mean, she's still in. If she doesn't go out, she's still in.
Didn't we have more focus in Yavamas about how strong Zika is?
Throughout the whole stuff.
Say Mamzerim only come from the cars.
That's the Machlokes Rabbi Akiva and
right? So is that this?
Rabbi Shimon.
Only allowed.
Basically, I don't know the answer to your question, what I'm trying to say. All right. I don't know. Yudalano and Beis, a new Mishnah at the top. Eved Ivri, nikne bekesef ubishtar. You are able to acquire an Eved Ivri only with money and with shtar. The Kone Atzmo, the Eved Ivri gets his freedom back, b'shanim uviyovel uvigir kesef. He gets them back with years, up to 6 years. He gets them back with yovel, wherever he falls out in the cycle, with a giron kesef, and if he pays off his value, he was hired for 6 years, $100 a year. If he pays off his balance, he can also go free. Yesera alav am ha'ivriya, but the am ha'ivriya has one leg up as it relates to the eved ha'ivri. Shekone es atzma b'simanen. When she becomes a nara and she shows. And she grows two hairs, so then we are under the assumption that she will then go free. Hanirtza nikne biritzia, a person who wants to remain in the Eved state, they have to get v'nirtza ozno b'martzeh v'avado le'olam, the psukim and mishpatim, and they put a nail or they drill through his right earlobe only. Nope. We'll see in the Gemara today that a woman is never in such a case scenario, that she doesn't get nirtza. And v'kone es atzmo b'yovel u'b'misas ha'adam. The nirtza can only get his freedom with yovel or with the death of his master, but otherwise he's in servitude, which means his maximum is 49-ish years, right? Or the death.
Because you have 6. You have
not a nirtza. A nirtza breaks through 6. A nirtza only has yovel. A regular Eved HaIvri is like you're saying. But a Nirtza says, I don't want to go free. And the only things that let the Nirtza out is Yovel and Misas Haba. So now we're going to go through a lot of these cases and try and figure out piece by piece what they all mean. Eved Ivri nikne bekesef minalan. How do we know that an Eved Ivri can be niknes with money? Amar krami kesef miknasa malamit nikne bekesef. Very simple. Okay, says the Gemara, Ashkechan Eved Ivri hanimkar le'ovei kochavim. The psukim of mikesef miknasa, we're speaking about an Eved Ivri that's being sold to a goy. In regards to a goy, hol v'chol kinyan bekesef. Goyim don't have anything else; they only have these transactions of money. L'dugma, a non-Jew does not have meshicha, kinyan chalipin, kinyan sudar, hagba. They have none of that. By a goy, it's just transfer of money. That's it. There's nothing else. I don't even know how it works with a star. Like if we give a star that has financial, the money's coming. When you give it to them, is that binding already? Or does this Gemara saying, no, it's dollars, like when the money changes hands. But for sure, as it relates to Eved Ivri, it seems to be until the money changes hands. So that's what it says. How do we know? Ashkechan Eved Ivri nimkar below b'kochavim ho v'chol kinyan b'kesef nimkar liYisrael minal. And what about the sale of an Eved Ivri to a Yid? Amar kra v'hefta. That we're able to redeem them in regards to the lowering of money, and they can go free. So it says the Gemara, Ashkechan Amaha Ivriya. Okay, I understand in regards to Amaha Ivriya, Hol Umikacha Bekesef, Mekanya Bekesef. Since she could marry with money, she can also be acquired with money. Eved Ivri Minalan. What about an Eved Ivri? Where do we know about him in regards to money? Amar Kra, Kiyim Karlach Achicha HaIvri O HaIvriya. We see the pasuk speaks about both the man and the woman. The man and the woman are compared, and therefore both of them can be purchased through dollars. A third of the way down, the Gemara says, Ashkechan machruhu bezdin. I understand all of these cases if you're talking about a sale of an Eved HaIvri or an Amma HaIvriya in bezdin, hol v'nimkar bal korcho, because those cases can actually be done even bal korcho. Mocher la'atzmo minalan. But can a person sell themselves into servitude on their own without the framework of a bezdin? To this, the Gemara says, yes. Yalif sachir sachir. We have two psukim. One pasuk says, "Kisachir kisoshav yihye imach achnas hayovel ya'avod imach." A pasuk in Vayikra, and the next pasuk says, I'm going to skip kimishne schar sachir avarcha sheishanim v'chule. So we have this gzeira shava, and the gzeira shava teaches that a person can sell themselves into Jewish servitude. But I wonder if this works nowadays. Is that a thing? I'm not interested. I'm just curious, like how. I have no idea. Right. But it's not that Yovel isn't. It's that we don't know when Yovel is. Which is a separate issue. No way out. So if you're losing the out, does that mean that the concept isn't chal? Oh yeah, for sure. That's right. Here it's a little bit more lumdish though, because here we're saying like we don't know when Yovel is. So if you don't have your get out of jail card, then like you always have Misa Sabal. Yeah, he's going to die at some point. Not true. That's only by a nirta that they go free, because a regular eved stays with the family if the father dies. Only by the nirta when is misa sabal does he go free. Okay, so says the Gemara, fine, sachir, we have gzeira shava, therefore we know that a person can sell themselves into servitude. Says the Gemara, a third of the way down, a little bit more, hanicha lamanda amar lamanda yaliv sachir. Not everybody learns the drasha of sachir, but for that guy, great, then everything is kafta referach. Then we know someone can sell themselves into servitude. Elamanda amar lo yaliv sachir. But according to the Tana that doesn't learn this drasha, so then Ma'ikal Meimar, how then can he say that someone can sell themselves into servitude? Says the Gemara, because he learns Amar Kra. We learn from the pasuk when the pasuk says V'chi sasig, the vav. When you see the vav and V'chi sasig in that pasuk, it teaches us two dinim. It teaches us in regards to Mosef al inyan rishon v'lamed alav mitachton. We learn one idea from the other, and just like in one case scenario by a goy, we have a case where he can sell himself. So too by a yid. And now let's analyze the shita, the person who says, Lo yaliv sachir. Uman tana de lo yaliv sachir. Who is the tana who doesn't make this gzeira shava of sachir, which teaches us that I can sell myself into servitude as a yid? Hi tana hu detanya, it's the author of the following brisa. So we're going to start the brisa now. We're going to analyze a couple of parts of the brisa, and we're going to stop in the middle of analyzing the brisa, and we're going to go about 10 lines down on Tes Vav Amud Aleph. Then we'll pick up again in Yirtzeh Hashem tomorrow. The brisa reads as follows, halfway down. Hamocher atzmo. If a man sells himself, nimkar l'sheish, v'yeser al sheish. He can sell himself for 6 years, or he can sell himself for even more than 6 years. Machru bezdin eino nimkar ela b'sheish. But if Bezdin sells him, he has to stop at 6 years. He cannot go beyond. That's din number 1 of the Tanakama. Hamocher atzmo eino nirtza. If a person sells himself into servitude, he is not the person who is able to say, "I want to stay with you forever," and get his ear punched. Machru bezdin nirtza. That's an interesting limit. It's a limiter. The only types of people who are able to say, "I want to stay with you forever," are people who were initially sold into their abdus by bezdin. But if you were sold on the black market or by yourself, whatever the case may be, then you can never say v'avodo le'olam. You're not able. Mocher atzmo, when a person sells himself, ein ma'anikin lo, then when he leaves, there are no gifts that are given to him. Machru bezdin, but if a person was sold into servitude by bezdin, then ma'anikin lo. Hamocher atzmo, when a man sells himself into servitude, ein rabba moser la shifcha kanainis. The Rav is not allowed to give the Evet who is mocher himself into avdos a shifcha kanainis. Machru bezdin, but if he was sold by bezdin, then rabba moser la shifcha kanainis. All of this is the Tanakama. However, Rebbe Lazar Omer, Zevazeh, that's not correct. He completely disagrees with the Tanakama on all counts. Zevazeh eino nimkar ela l'sheish. No, neither of them can do more than 6 years. Zevazeh nirtza. Both of them can get their ears pierced. V'zevazeh ma'anikin lo, whether or not you were mocher yourself to Bezdin, or if Bezdin was mocher you can get gift upon your departure. V'zevazeh rabbo moser lo shivcha kenanis. And in both cases, if you're mocher atzmo, even if you're mocher atzmo, you're eligible to get a shivcha kenanis to have children with. And says the Gemara, this brisa, my lab v'hakamiflage. It seems that the Tanakama lo yaliv sachir. He seems to not make a bridge between the world of machruhu bezdin and the world of mocher la'atzmo. That's a beautiful assumption. That's what it sounds like. Rebbe Lazar yaliv sachir, and therefore the dinim by machruhu bezdin and mocher la'atzmo are exactly the same. The Gzeir Shava creates a bridge. So it seems to be that that's what's going on. Amar Rav tiv yumi mishmei de Abaye. No, de kule alma yaliv sachir. Really, everyone agrees to the drasha of sachir. There's no such thing as a shita that doesn't agree to that Gzeir Shava. Everyone agrees with it. So what's the machlokas between the Tanakam and Rebbe Lazar? So we're going to have to go through all of the various pieces that we learned in our Mishnah as to why they argue in each of those cases. We're not going to get to finish analyzing all the pieces of our Mishnah. So when we'll stop, it'll be a little bit of a cliffhanger before we finish analyzing this brisa, but let's get started. This is really what they're arguing about. My time, why does it say kra? Oh. Plural. Because our Mishnah is not really talking about. What?
I got correct.
I have a note on the side here that says defusim. This was in the defus of some svarim. Arguing about a bunch of psukim, not just one pasuk. Okay, fine. This is issue number 1. My time of the Tanakama. Why did the Tanakama say da'amar mocher atzmo nimkar l'sheish v'yeser al sheish? Why is it that the Tanakama held that a person who sells himself into servitude can choose to do 6 years or more? Well, mi'et rachmana gabe machruhu bezdin va'avodcha sheishanim ze velo mocher la'atzmo. He made a diuk. Okay, so that's why the Tanakama held that was the case. Va'avodcha sheishanim, that you can pick 6 years, and if you're an individual, you can ze velo mocher la'atzmo. So says the Gemara, v'idach, what does the other shita hold? V'avdecha teaches us something else. It has nothing to do about mechiras atmo. It's talking about something else. L'cha v'lo l'yorish, that it's in regards to that person, but not for yorshim. V'idach, where do you learn the din about yorshim? Avdecha achrina ksiv. There's a second avdecha. V'idach, going back and forth between the tanaim like ping pong. Ahu la'artzas adon hu da'asa. No, that word avdecha teaches us that when a person goes free, that it should be behartzas adon, that the adon should be peaceful about it. So their machlokes is not about the drasha of sachir, about the Gzeir Shava. Everyone agrees about sachir, so they're arguing about something else. And now let's pick up on the second thing that they're arguing about. 4 lines from the bottom on your Daled Amud Beis. My time at the Tanakama damar mocher atzmo eino nirtza. Why is it that the Tanakama was of the opinion that a man who sells himself into servitude is not allowed to get his ear pierced? Says the Gemara, midemiet rachmana gabe machruhu bezdin. There's something about bezdin which is unique. V'ratza adonav es ozno b'martzea, ozno shalo v'lo ozno shel mocher la'atzmo. So the Tanakama was of the opinion that there's a difference between bezdin and mocher la'atzmo. and he learns it from the pasuk. The idach, what would Rabbi Lazar say about that? Top of Tesvav Amud Aleph, about 10 lines to go. Rabbi Lazar would say, "Hahi l'gzera shavahu da'asa." That language of ozno is actually part of a gzera shava. The Tanya, a very interesting feature of getting your ear pierced to be a permanent eved. Says the Gemara, the Tanya, Rabbi Lazar Omer, Minayin l'ritzia shiba ozen yemanis. How do we know that the piercing of the ear, when a person says, I want to be in servitude forever, is in the right ear? Ne'emar kan ozen, v'ne'emar lahalan ozen. Ma lahalan yamin, afkan yamin. It says ozen in a couple of places. And one was talking about bohen yad hayamanis, bohen ragla yamanis, bohen ozen hayamanis. That's from that world over there. We bring it back over here. That's a gzera shava. So therefore, the word ozen is already being used. What would the Tanakama say? Says the Gemara, if that's true, then lemakra ozen, my ozno, and then I have some words that are added in on the side, shmami no tarte, that's missing from the text of our Gemara. The Oz v'Hadar adds it in. And therefore, we can learn out two things. We can learn out that it's always in the right ear, and we can also learn out the basic din that we were trying to say, that there's a difference between machruhu bezdin and machruhu la'atzmo, that only by machruhu bezdin can you get ritzia in the ear, can you become a permanent eved. That's not the case if you sold yourself into slavery. What would the other Tana called? What would the other Tana hold? We need the pasuk of ozno for something else. Ozno v'lo ozna. That it only applies to him and not to her. That a woman is in no such scenario. The second she reaches simanim, the second she reaches narus of having shtei simanim, she's done. Shtei syros, she's out. How does the other shita learn about the fact that women are exempt from this ritzia, from this permanent servitude? Nafkale mi v'im yomar ha'eved below ama. Another day we figure that out. Okay, v'idach, what do you do with the word, with the pasuk of mi v'im yomar ha'eved? Mi boile ach yomar kshehu eved. Has to be only when the person says that you should be an eved. V'idach, what does the other Tana say? Mi eved ha'eved nafka. That's learned out from eved and ha'eved, the extra letter of hey. V'idach, and the final approach for right now is eved ha'eved lo darish. So as you can see, what the Gemara is doing over here is we had this brisa comparing many features of the world of eved from the Tanakama to Rabbi Lazar, and we thought maybe that one of these shitas was of the opinion that I don't hold of sachir. Says where everybody does, and therefore no kasha in our Gemara. And now we're just picking apart that brisa to understand why that's the case. We'll pick up right here, 10 lines down on Tesvav Amud Aleph tomorrow night. Wishing you all a beautiful day.